Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wisdom Chat, all things money and well-being. And my guest today is Nikki Eyre. Nikki is the founder of Conduct Change, that looks at the changing behaviours of work based on the prevention of workplace bullying. Nikki, it's lovely to have you on Wisdom Chat, and thank you for your valuable time.
Hi Phil, it's lovely to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, no worries. I know we've been sort of chatting a little bit about the connection between things like workplace bullying and finance, although that's not something that's necessarily talked about, or there's a natural, in people's mind, link between the two. But should we just open that up and see where that kind of leads?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because there's kind of three different ways that we can come at this. And one is about the impact on the individual who feels bullied. One might be about finances causing anxiety, which leads to behaviour change of somebody and therefore results in them developing and showing bullying behaviours in the workplace. And the other is about kind of financial impact of the whole organisation. So there's kind of three different areas there to explore.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that. I'm highlighting those three different areas. I suppose in some respects, in some people's minds, they wouldn't naturally create that link between bullying and finances. But when you put it that way, you can actually see where somebody can inadvertently find themselves in a position of wanting to control because of their own perhaps anxiety that's caused by perhaps their own financial circumstances, or their anxiety may be because of where the business is at, and therefore don't realise the behaviour they're displaying is actually become to some a form of bullying. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, and I think, particularly kind of following the pandemic, when people have perhaps had businesses where they've really struggled and they're desperate to get them back on their feet, then they might be pushing people when they're not quite ready to go there, for example, if they've had a long time off work. But you've got that, unless we turn this around, we could go under for some people. And that's a really difficult place to be in as a business owner. I think the other side of that as an organisation is that when you look at organisations, the board doesn't generally think about workplace bullying. It doesn't tend to be a topic that comes up on their agenda. And yet, if you have a bullying culture in an organisation, then it's we kind of dilute it down to an individual issue, and it's not generally. There can be bullying behaviours which are inherent through the whole organisation. So they're work related. They're about the amount of work that people are being asked to do, the demands that are put on them, how much control they have over their job, things like that. And so consequently, what we find is that people get to a stage where they start to feel bullied by these behaviours. And if there are, one person who speaks up about it, that may escalate into formal procedures, and that has a ripple effect on everybody around them. So it reduces productivity and performance of the person in the case, but also on the people around them. Yeah. And it can really impact on kind of the well-being of individuals. And so for somebody who feels bullied, who can actually feel like you've been traumatized by that. Yes. Workplace bullying trauma is becoming more recognised now. But actually what happens is it goes back up to the board. They look at it overall and they go, well, our performance has gone down, our profitability has gone down, productivity has gone down. Therefore, we need to do something about this. We need to get our performance back up. And they do it all on performance issues instead of looking at what are the behaviours and how is that impacting on the well-being and the attitude and behaviours of our workforce. Yeah. And so they reinforce the problems that were there in the first place. Yeah. So which is never going to make them more profitable.
No, and I think as well it drives home again, probably much perhaps to some people's dismay, the whole issue about psychology and how important understanding ourselves and being made aware of perhaps the shadow side of our behaviours, the parts that we automatically find ourselves doing but are not aware of. And yet they are very, very important. And whether it's money, whether it's the workplace, whether it's leadership, these things are vital. And if we're going to have a healthy working place, we've got to consider all of these things. We can't consider them in their isolation, would you say? And therefore, money is just a part of it, as well as anything else they have to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're doing is we're looking at the outcome instead of going down to the root cause of the problem. Yeah. So it's, we're trying to solve the symptom instead of the problem.
Yeah.
And that, that happens so often in business. And we really need to start going a little bit deeper. And it's like you say, wellbeing programs can vary enormously across different organisations. So the level of support that's available for people when things might start going wrong, and whether that's internally or externally, but if it impacts on their well-being, then that level of support varies enormously. And if people don't get the right kind of support environment, advice at the right time, then they can very rapidly damage their mental health, and then ultimately their physical health as they go through that. Yeah,
I think the same can be said of when we're dealing in the world of finances. We like measuring things as a society. We're very good at that. But the problem with that is that if we can't measure it, then perhaps it's not worth considering. And actually, there are aspects of who we are as individuals and who we are corporately that sometimes are not easy to measure, like our emotional state and how that can influence our choices and behaviours in life in any aspect, finances, workplace, leadership, whatever it may be. And to then not acknowledge them, actually we're doing ourselves a disservice. And like you say, being able to get to the root cause is really key to build a successful business and resilience for the future, but individually to build a resilient individual who can actually achieve their life goals and purposes or aspirations. And I know for ourselves, when we're dealing with the psychology of money, the reason why we deal with that, helping people understand their choices and behaviours around money and unpicking those perhaps beliefs that are disempowering or limiting, unhelpful, and that which can cause them not to achieve their goals and aspirations in life, is vital for reducing stress and anxiety in the workplace or in stress and anxiety in the individual. And it's interesting what you say. You can see then a married up link between, any aspect, including money, and our approach to stress and anxiety and how we deal with that, how that overflows into how we interact with other people.
And it's really interesting when you talk about being able to measure it, because like you say, people want to be able to measure. They want to be able to put a cost around something. And if they can't do that, then they struggle with it. And yet there's been some research that says the cost of conflict in the workplace is over £1,000 per employee. Wow. Now, if we can start to look at behaviours and we can start to, like you say, you unpick some of those bad habits, when we become aware of how we're behaving and the impact that it has on others and where some adjustments need to be made, then we can actually start to shift entire cultures. And that's really good on a business level. But let's bring that back to an individual level as well. Because if you think about a bullying case, I don't think they really kind of look at what it costs, because what they tend to do is think a bullying case, well, they either left or we paid them off, or it went to a tribunal and there was whatever agreement. And that's kind of like where you think of the finances within it. But you've got all of the invisible costs around how much management time is being spent on these? What's the cost of absence as a result of that person feeling so traumatized by this? What's the cost to it's the reputation and the goodwill that gets damaged in that process as well.
Yeah.
But also the cost to the NHS, the medical costs, the EAP costs, the occupational health costs, those are all in there as well. And you know, it really starts to build and build and build.
Yeah.
And again, on an individual level, when we talk about kind of the cost to an individual, we tend to talk about the psychological impact, the physical health impact, the behavioural impact, so how the behaviours change, the social impact, how your relationships change, both inside of work and outside of work, and you become more isolated.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about the fact that while that person's been on sick leave, their income may have been reduced quite considerably. We don't talk about the fact that when they've left, you know, they might have had to leave their job and they might have lost all confidence in terms of going on to find another job. They might end up only feeling able to go for something at a lower level. And for some people, they don't ever work again and end up on benefits.
Yeah.
For me, if you want a real example, I took a settlement agreement when I left and I got paid a few thousand. And if I'd have known how long it was going to take me to recover, I would never have walked away for that, because it took me about 6 years to really build my confidence back up to the level where it was before. And I think the real cost, because I had to sell personal belongings, we had to sell our house, and unfortunately we could downsize, but you know, not everyone's in that position. And I think the real cost to me has been close to £500,000.
Wow.
So when we're talking about financial impact, it is huge. It is really significant. And when you're asking people to get over trauma and deal with their, you know, ever disappearing finances at the same time, that's tough. That's really tough to do.
That I mean, it really does drive home the need to address some of these areas, and areas like workplace bullying, so vitally important, and how many of us realise those hidden costs that you've just spoken of on a business is phenomenal. On the individual and the repercussions for the recipient, absolutely heartbreaking to hear. And it's interesting, just on that point, Nikki, I remember looking at some quite extensive research around money anxiety, and 77% of those people involved in the research, and this research went on for, well, it's on an annual basis. Close Brothers do the research, Gallup do extensive research, but others in the finance industry and the CIPD, the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development, have done their own research. Say 77% of those who are experiencing money anxiety or money worries say it affects their work. So if it's affecting their work, and then they're not being responded to in terms of what it is that's causing the effect of their poor productivity or lack of engagement, and instead there's this rather draconian approach, because we simply need you can do better, you can do more, we expect more from you, then people are not going to feel supportive, not feel encouraged. There isn't really an incentive to really do better, because they feel immediately judged and condemned in some respects. So that's on a personal level. But I can understand also from the business perspective, if they don't really get to the bottom of the root cause, and I know some businesses are doing that now, but there's still a lot that aren't. They just address the symptoms and actually wonder why it never resolves the problem. They throw things at it. Even EAP programs can be not return the value that's been spent on them, and people then start to say, well, these are rubbish, they're not working. But in actual fact, they're not working because you're not addressing the root causes. And I think bullying or people feeling like they're being bullied if that's not addressed, it's going to have such an adverse impact on the person's life and on the business.
It does. It has a huge impact, and until we start actually really taking it seriously, then it's going to continue to be a problem. And I think part of it is it's very easy for a business to say, well, just get rid of them, the insurance will cover it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is the attitude in some businesses.
Yeah.
Whereas other businesses will absolutely, they'll put the support in place and they'll help that person, they'll help to resolve the issue. And part of the problem is we've got systems that are not fit for purpose. They're very outdated. Somebody has to be right and wrong. And we know that it's not as simple as that. When you talk about the psychology behind it, it is not as simple as one person is right and one person is wrong. But that's how we're trying to do it.
Yeah.
And, you get HR come into the process and then they're actually paid to protect the organisation against going to a tribunal. So you have, what happens is it just escalates the anxiety, the concerns, the trauma eventually just escalates because of those. And, when you think how many people get involved in those, HR, management, union reps, occupational health, lawyers, judges, all of those people, the human cost is phenomenal, but also the financial cost of all of that is phenomenal as well. So why on earth would we not want to just get rid of that in the first place?
I just wonder, Nikki, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I wonder sometimes, because we're talking a lot about the hidden costs, because they're hidden by their very nature, if we don't see them, we don't take account of them. So we tend to make judgments based on what we see or what we perceive we're seeing there and then. And as a result, we don't appreciate the long-term implications, and especially on a business, the financial implication in the long term. Even if we think, oh, we're going to win this, but actually, at the end of the day, what about the staff that remain that see what's happened? And people do talk, and we see that even in social media. Social media is such a voice for people airing their opinions, viewpoints, and so on about how companies are, how CEOs are, and so on. It makes good sense not to ignore these things, but to start to look at, well, what are the root causes here, and what can be done to help them change? And it just brings me to this point, Nikki. If we were going to say to an employee, if an employer was saying, I've not thought about these things, but actually they are quite impactful, what advice could you give to an employer that would cause them to perhaps investigate this field more and ask more questions, or even come and talk to you?
Yeah, there are some really simple internal indicators of workplace bullying, which are also, very similar if there is problems with well-being in the workforce as well. So your absenteeism, your staff turnover, bullying complaints can be an indicator, but don't forget that not everybody, in fact, probably less than half of the people actually report bullying. And of those, very few will actually go through to a formal process. And so don't assume that your bullying complaint figures are a true reflection of how people are feeling in your organisation. That's only a very, very small part of the bigger picture.
So just on that though, so if that's the case then, Nikki, what else could somebody do just to see, is this actually bullying or is this something else?
There's no quick answer to that necessarily. Right. So actually it's probably a little bit more digging. So what we can do with organisations is we go in and we'll do an audit that looks at some of the quantitative and qualitative information that they've got. So there's more and more questions going to employee surveys now. There's people doing pulse surveys. So we can start to look for where are things going wrong. But, we need to flip that as well. And we need to say to an organisation, what are you doing to actually reinforce what are the positive behaviours that you want to see on a daily basis?
Yeah.
How do those behaviours align with the values that you have for your organisation? What are you doing to reinforce that message on an ongoing basis? How are you measuring that? Because actually what we've got at the moment is all of our kind of supervision, appraisal processes, things like that are all about performance. Well, let's take some of that out and put the focus back onto behaviour and, really modelling those good behaviours that you want to see, particularly from your leaders. And actually, if you start to link, bonus payments and salaries and promotions to the behaviours and not just to performance and profitability, then you'll see a real change in your organisation. And that's what people are looking for now. They want to know that they're going to be well treated and well looked after and developed and be able to, challenge and do things differently and have those opportunities, that psychological safety to be able to speak up without fear of humiliation is so, so important in an organisation today.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And I would just add to that when any organisation is actually looking at just somehow measuring the well-being of their workforce, that they do actually consider the financial aspect, because where people are worrying about their finances, that too will have an adverse effect on their performance. And may in some respect contribute to certain behaviours that are not necessarily positive or what the company really wants to promote. So it's worth actually looking at that area as well in the mix. But Nikki, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights as well around the area of workplace bullying, some of the hidden costs, which are phenomenal, really, when you think about it. And I hope that that's been very helpful to our audience. And if anybody has any questions or would like to talk to Nikki about the sort of workplace bullying, or even look at the financial side, then please do go on to Aurum Gold's website. We will put you in touch with Nikki, and we will put you in touch with anybody that's appropriate for your particular needs. So thank you very much for listening to another episode of Wisdom Chat. Thank you very much. And thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Phil.